I got into my husband's car and found a tube of lubricant in the glove compartment. I stayed silent. I had secretly replaced it with industrial glue. What happened afterward forced the neighbors to call the fire department. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it's traveled. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at Daniel, my husband, who had just come home from dinner with colleagues. He came in looking tired, tossed his coat onto the sofa, loosened his tie, and collapsed onto the bed without even showering. Within minutes, his snores filled the room. I got up quietly, cleaning the mess he had left in the living room. Coat, wallet, phone, his old laptop. His phone screen still glowed with a new email. I frowned. Daniel never used email. He always said, "Linda, this tech stuff is too complicated. I'd rather just call." Yet here was a strange email right on the screen. Out of curiosity, I opened it. The message was short, just a few words. "You were amazing today, Daddy Love," with a red heart. My heart stopped like I'd been slapped. Daddy Love. Who would call him that in such an intimate tone? I scrolled down, looking for more clues, but there was nothing, just a weird address made up of random characters. My whole body trembled, as if a cold wind had rushed in through a crack in the door. I looked toward the bedroom and saw Daniel rolling over, snoring heavily. Startled, I quickly put the phone back where it was, my heart pounding like a thief caught red-handed. I went back to cleaning. When I picked up his dirty clothes to wash, I found a folded receipt in his pants pocket. It was from an upscale restaurant in New Orleans. I frowned. New Orleans. Yet he had said he was in Chicago tonight, meeting a client. The receipt listed dinner for two, an expensive bottle of wine, main courses of steak and pasta. I tried to remember the last time Daniel had taken me to a place like that. Probably 10 years ago, when I opened my first bakery. So who had he gone with in New Orleans while lying about being in Chicago? I grabbed my phone, snapped pictures of the receipt and the email. I didn't want to believe it, but the instinct of a 58-year-old wife is never wrong. Something was happening, and I needed to find out the truth. I went down to the garage. Daniel's old car was still warm, the smell of gasoline lingering. I opened the door, turned on my flashlight, and searched the driver's seat. Nothing unusual, just a few coins and an empty water bottle. But when I reached into the glove compartment, my hand brushed against something slick. I pulled it out and nearly collapsed. A used tube of lubricant, its cap sticky. I froze in the dark garage, staring at it as if it were some filthy secret. We hadn't been intimate for years. Daniel always said he was tired, that age had dulled his desire. So who was this for? I was shaken but forced myself to stay calm. I put it back where it was. I wiped my hands with tissues, as if afraid it might leave a stain. I searched more carefully. Under the back seat, I found some crumpled tissues reeking of a cloying sweet perfume, not a man's scent, and nothing like mine. It was foreign, provocative. I photographed everything, the tube, the tissues, as if I could capture the smell in the image. I locked the car, went back inside, and sat at the kitchen table. My hands shook as I picked up Daniel's phone again. By then, I was almost certain he was cheating. I checked every message, but they were all dull work exchanges. The inbox was empty except for that strange email. I looked at sent mail and drafts. Nothing. Too clean, too suspicious, as if he'd deleted every trace. By the time dawn light filtered through the curtains, I had already been up for hours, restless in the kitchen. I made a simple breakfast, 2 fried eggs, some toast, and a cup of strong black coffee, just the way Daniel liked it. I hadn't slept all night. The images of the tube, the restaurant receipt, and that email haunted me. Daniel came downstairs looking worn out, hair messy, eyes heavy. He sat down, sipped the coffee, then set it aside. "Big meeting today," he rasped, avoiding my gaze. "I'll definitely be home late." I forced a thin smile, though inside I wanted to scream. "Where's the meeting? With who? In New Orleans again?" Instead, I simply said, "All right, take care." He stood, patted my shoulder like always, and left. The door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the quiet kitchen with my suspicions. I cleaned the dishes one by one, but my mind spun. I couldn't just sit there guessing. I needed the truth, solid proof. I picked up the phone and called Margaret, my longtime friend who had once helped me open the bakery. Not long ago, she had mentioned a private investigator who specialized in infidelity cases. "Linda, if you ever need, I'll give you Mr. Davis's number. He's discreet and reliable," she'd said. I never thought I'd use it, but now I had no choice. I dialed, my voice shaky. "Margaret, can you connect me with Mr. Davis? I need him." She went quiet for a moment, then asked, "Linda, what happened? Did Daniel do something?" I sighed, unwilling to explain over the phone. "I just need the truth, please." "Of course," she said right away. Within an hour, I got a message from Davis, arranging to meet at noon in a small cafe downtown. "Mrs. Linda, don't worry. I'll help you," he wrote. Simple words, but enough to ease my chest a little. That afternoon, I walked into the cafe, a modest place with worn wooden tables and the smell of roasted coffee beans. I chose a quiet corner. Davis arrived, a stocky, middle-aged man in a pale blue shirt, his sharp eyes taking in everything. I handed him a USB drive with the photos I'd taken. The strange email, the restaurant receipt, the tube of gel, the tissues. "This is all I have," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm not sure, but I think my husband is cheating." Davis nodded, flipping through the photos, jotting notes in his notebook. "I understand. I'll start surveillance on Mr. Daniel this afternoon. Don't worry, I'll update you as soon as I can." I looked at him, fighting tears. "Thank you. I just want the truth, whatever it is." Davis nodded, his eyes steady and understanding. "I'll do my best. Stay calm and don't let him suspect anything." I left the cafe, walking among the crowd yet feeling utterly alone. 35 years of marriage. I had trusted Daniel with my whole life, always believing he was a family man who would stand by me through everything. And now, I had to hire someone to spy on him. That night, as I sat in the bakery checking accounts, my phone buzzed. A message from Davis. I opened it, my heart racing. It was a photo. Daniel, in his familiar pale blue shirt, walking into an upscale restaurant, hand in hand with a woman. I zoomed in and my chest tightened. It was Emily Evans, my daughter-in-law. She wore a tight black dress, heavy makeup, red lips, her hair flowing. They didn't look like father-in-law and daughter-in-law, but like lovers. I collapsed into a chair, my hands trembling as I held the phone. Emily. How could it be? At family gatherings, she and Daniel always seemed distant, barely talking. Davis sent more pictures. In one, they sat in a private corner, the table decorated with candles and flowers. Emily leaned toward Daniel, smiling, while he lifted her glass with a tender gaze. Looking at that photo, it felt like my chest was being crushed. In 35 years, I had never seen him look at me that way, not even in our youth, when I was just a bright-eyed girl from Texas with long hair and a radiant smile. He had never looked at me like that. And then, past midnight, Davis sent a video. I put on my headphones, hands shaking, and pressed play. In the video, Emily leaned close, whispering something that made Daniel burst out laughing. Her voice was sweet, her eyes sparkling under the restaurant lights. Then they stood up and left. Daniel gallantly opened the car door for her, like she was a lady of honor. He was the perfect lover. I replayed the video again and again, each time like a knife twisting deeper. Emily, the daughter-in-law I once treated like my own daughter, the one I taught to make our family's flan recipe. And Daniel, the man I had given my life to, the man I had built a family with. What had they done behind my back? Behind Michael's back, my son? I saved every photo and video onto the USB, noting the date, time, location, even the restaurant name. My hands moved like a machine, but my mind was in chaos. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe Daniel and Emily could sink so low, but the proof was undeniable. I sat in the bakery, surrounded by trays of pastries, but it felt like the world was crumbling. I remembered the early days, when Daniel helped me carry flour sacks, when we laughed together in that tiny kitchen. Now it was just a distant memory. The next morning, I stood in the bakery kitchen with a long order list for a big downtown hotel. The smell of flour and vanilla, once my comfort, now felt hollow. Just as I signed the delivery slip, my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I wiped my hands, my heart sinking when I saw it was from Davis. Just one short line, "Mrs. Linda, I'm sending more evidence." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but my hands trembled as I opened the message. A series of photos appeared on the screen. In the first one, Daniel, in his familiar gray shirt, was walking out of a law office near the central square. Beside him, Emily wore a beige business dress, her hair tied in a high ponytail, oversized sunglasses covering most of her face. They walked so close together, not like a father-in-law and daughter-in-law, but like lovers. The next photo showed them in front of a 4-star hotel in New Orleans, its glass doors gleaming, a gold-plated sign above the entrance. I zoomed in, searching for some detail that might deny what I was seeing, but there was nothing. They seemed far too natural, too comfortable with each other. Then came a short video from Mr. Davis. I pressed play, and my heart pounded as if it would burst. The recording was taken from a distance, but clear enough to show Daniel and Emily on the third-floor balcony of the hotel. His arm was wrapped around her waist, her head resting on his shoulder, her long hair blowing in the wind. Then, like a knife to the chest, I saw them kiss quickly, openly, without hesitation. A short kiss, but enough to burn away my last shred of hope. I replayed the video frame by frame, each image carving deeper into me. The curtain shifted, and Emily ran out to throw her arms around Daniel, her face glowing with the happiness of a woman in love. I collapsed into a chair, gripping the table edge to keep from falling apart. Mr. Davis wrote, "They rented a room in the afternoon. Looks like they'll stay the night. I'll keep watching." I reread the message over and over, my throat tight as if squeezed. Just a few hours earlier, Daniel had texted me, "Linda, I won't be home tonight. I have to meet with an important foreign client. Get some rest." His tone was sweet and caring, like always. But now I knew it was nothing but a polished lie. An important foreign client. He wasn't at that 4-star hotel with a business partner. He was there with my daughter-in-law. I opened my external hard drive and carefully saved every photo, every video. Each time I pressed the save button, I watched them again, as if to make sure I wasn't dreaming. In the video, the way Daniel looked at Emily was full of tenderness. The way he brushed her hair reminded me of 30 years ago, when he used to touch Veer. Me the same way. Back then we were young, and I believed our love would last forever. Now, looking at that scene, all I saw was deceit and shameless betrayal. I remembered family gatherings, everyone sitting around the table. Emily always kept her distance from Daniel. Sometimes she even looked at him with disdain. When he tried to joke, Michael would laugh and say, "Mom, I don't think Emily can stand Dad. She always avoids him like he's contagious." I believed that too. I thought they didn't get along, that she was just trying to fit into the family. Now I realized it had all been an act. They performed so well in front of me, in front of Michael, in front of the entire neighborhood. I felt like such a fool, a blind wife deceived by two traitors right under my nose, right on the streets we all shared. The world went on as usual, unaware of what happened on that hotel balcony, but Mr. Davis had captured it all like a silent hunter. I replied, "Thank you. Please keep watching. I need to know everything." He answered simply, "I will. Stay calm." That night, I returned to the house that once had been my home with Daniel. I opened the bedroom drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. I printed all the evidence, photos of Daniel and Emily leaving the law office, photos of them entering the hotel, photos of them on the balcony, and every frame of the video. I arranged them neatly, sealed the envelope, and hid it under a stack of old family pictures at the bottom of the drawer. I stared at one photo of the four of us, me, Daniel, Michael, and Emily, at Michael's birthday party a few years back. Emily was hugging Michael and smiling, while Daniel stood next to me with his arm proudly over my shoulder. Now, looking at that photo, all I wanted was to tear it apart. Early the next morning, before dawn, I heard the front door creak open. Daniel stumbled in, reeking of alcohol. "Tough client, Linda," he mumbled, his voice hoarse, eyes bloodshot as if he hadn't slept all night. "I had to drink a lot. I'm exhausted." I stood in the kitchen holding a glass of water, watching his performance as if he were rubbing salt into an open wound. I answered calmly as always, "Get some rest. You have work tomorrow." He nodded, patted my shoulder out of habit, and shuffled off to bed. Minutes later, he was snoring, peaceful, as if he hadn't betrayed me, as if he hadn't spent the night at a hotel with our daughter-in-law. Once I was sure Daniel was asleep, my phone buzzed. It was a call from Davis. His voice was low, almost a whisper, as if afraid someone might overhear. "Mrs. Linda." I recorded their conversation in the hotel parking lot. I used special equipment. They didn't notice. I'll send it now. My heart pounded, I replied. "Thank you, Davis. Send me the file." Minutes later, an audio file appeared in my messages. I put on my headphones, sat at the table, and pressed play. Emily's voice came first, cold and ambitious. "Push that fake contract faster, Dad. I want to own this entire bakery chain soon." It was like a punch to the chest. I clutched the phone. Then Daniel's voice, low and confident. "Linda doesn't know a thing about those papers. Leave it to me. She trusts me completely." It felt like someone drove a knife into my heart. They weren't just betraying me. They were planning to steal everything I had built. The bakery chain, my sweat, my tears, my sleepless nights, every batch of bread, every day rushing across town to deliver on time. It was all mine. Daniel had never touched the dough, never manned the counter, never signed a contract with a hotel, and now he and Emily wanted to take it, to push me out of the home I had turned into a sanctuary. I nearly collapsed, but forced myself to stay composed. I copied the audio file to a USB with the rest of the evidence. I noted the time, the place, as if clinging to order in the middle of a storm. The next morning, while brewing coffee at the bakery, my phone buzzed again. Davis had sent another set of photos, taken with a telephoto lens. In them, Daniel and Emily sat in his car with a thick folder in front of them. Emily held a red pen, marking up documents, while Daniel sat beside her, smiling in approval. Davis wrote, "I overheard something. Looks like they're planning to use contacts at the notary's office to push through a transfer. I'll dig deeper." I zoomed in on the photo, saw the handwriting on the paper, though I couldn't make out the words. But I understood. These weren't ordinary business documents. They were planning, step by step, to steal my life's work. I sat among trays of sweet pastries, but it felt like the world was collapsing. I replayed the audio file, listening to every word, every syllable. That old hag. That's how Emily referred to me. I thought back to when she first joined the family, when I taught her how to cook rice, when I embraced her like a daughter, believing she was part of the family, that she and Michael would build a future together. And Daniel, the man I had loved since I was a girl in Texas, who promised to be with me until the end. They had turned me into a joke, a fool still clinging to love and family. Just then, a longtime customer came in, Mrs. Clara, who always bought pastries for her grandchildren. "Linda, your bakery is always so busy. Your chain is really expanding," she said with a warm smile. I forced a small smile back. "Thank you, I'm just doing my best." But inside, I was unraveling. I wondered if she knew the truth, what she would think of me, whether she would see me as a strong woman or just a fool betrayed by her husband and daughter-in-law. I packed her pastries, walked her to the door, then collapsed into a chair, holding my head. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. Instead, a quiet anger burned inside me, like an oven fire ready to roar. That evening at dinner, I sat across from Daniel in the small kitchen, the yellow light casting strange shadows on his face. He spoke evenly, as if nothing was wrong. "Linda, this week I need to sign some important company documents. I might need you to look them over. They're tricky." I held a piece of bread, pretending to bite, while Emily's voice echoed in my head from the recording. "Dad, push that fake contract faster." I knew he was testing me, trying to pull me into his dirty scheme. I gave him a dry smile and replied, "Sure, I'll look later. I'm tired now." He nodded, sipped his wine, looked at me as if nothing was wrong. But I knew behind that smile was a man trying to rob me of everything I had built. Daniel poured another glass of wine, his face flushed, rambling about a difficult client. I listened like an outsider, but inside I wanted to scream. "You think I'm that stupid?" I whispered to myself. When he finally stumbled to bed, snoring loudly, he left his car keys on the nightstand, glinting under the dim light. I stared at him, my heart racing. This was my chance. I stepped quietly into the bedroom, careful not to make a sound. Each step was a battle between pain and resolve. I took the keys, clenched them tightly, and walked straight to the garage. The night was quiet, only the sound of crickets outside. I switched on my phone's flashlight. Its weak glow lit up Daniel's old car. I opened the door. The smell of gasoline lingered, mixed with a strange perfume. I opened the center console and immediately found the gel tube, its cap loose, the rim crusted with residue. I held it in my hand, feeling like I was holding a filthy secret. Clearly they had used it again, confirming that Daniel and Emily were still playing their secret game. I carried the tube into the kitchen, set it on the table, and scrubbed my hands with lemon soap. I washed hard, as if I could erase every trace of the betrayal I had just touched. The fresh scent didn't calm my anger, but it helped to me keep steady. I opened the tool drawer and pulled out a tube of clear industrial glue, the same kind I once used to fix a chair in the bakery. Carefully, I opened the gel tube, squeezed in drops of glue until it was full, wiped the rim clean, shook it gently to blend, then tested a little. It flowed smoothly, just like gel. To the naked eye, no one would notice the difference. I gave a thin smile, though a storm raged inside me. This wasn't a game, it was the first step toward justice. I put the tube back in the compartment. I straightened the rug and seat as if untouched, then shut the car door. I opened the trunk to check. Only a few crumpled plastic bags, an empty water bottle, and an unused condom lay in the corner. My chest tightened, but I wasn't surprised anymore. I snapped a photo, adding it to the growing file of evidence. Each picture was a puzzle piece, reminding me I could not let Daniel and Emily keep lying. Back home, I set the keys by Daniel's alarm clock. I picked up an old book, sat on the couch, and pretended to read. The weak light spilled across the page, but I couldn't take in a single word. My mind was tangled. I thought of Michael, my son, still believing he was happily married to Emily, never suspecting the truth. How could I tell him his wife and his father were betraying us both? I thought about the bakery chain, 40 years of sleepless work, every argument with Daniel to protect the dream. He never truly understood, but I believed he supported me. Now it was clear he was only waiting for a chance to steal it all. An hour later, Daniel woke up and staggered into the kitchen for water. He saw the keys on the table without the slightest suspicion. "You're still up, Linda?" He yawned. I smiled and said, "Yes, just reading a little. Drink some water and go back to bed." He nodded, gulped the water, and went back to the bedroom. Soon, his snores filled the air. I looked at him as if at a stranger. The man, who once swore to stay with me for life, was now plotting to destroy everything I held dear. But he didn't know I had already begun to fight back. At dawn, I was up. Pale sunlight filtered through the bakery windows. I stood in the kitchen, kneading dough, making pastries and flan for a large hotel order in New Orleans. Each push of my hands into the dough carried all my fury. When I returned for breakfast, I kept my face calm. Daniel was awake, holding a cup of black coffee. I served eggs and toast, then said slowly, "Daniel, tomorrow I have to go to Houston to sign a contract with a new partner. I'll definitely be home late. You'll need to fix your own dinner, okay?" I glanced at him. He looked up, startled, but in his eyes I saw not worry, but relief. "A big contract?" he asked, squeezing my hand with fake tenderness. "Don't worry. Go ahead. I'll handle everything." That look, that curve of his lips like a weight had been lifted, stabbed me straight in the chest. He wanted me gone, and I knew why. I smiled and nodded. "Thank you. I'll call if I'm late." He sipped more coffee, then stood, saying he had to get to the office early. When he walked out, I saw his phone left on the table, the screen glowing with a missed call. The name read, E. My stomach clenched, heart pounding. Emily Evans. It had to be her. Before I could touch it, Daniel rushed back, snatched it up, and shut the screen right in front of me. "Forgot it," he mumbled with a strained smile, then walked off again. I stood there, watching the door close, feeling as if I'd been slapped. He wasn't even trying to hide anymore. That day, I worked like a machine, delivering pastries, signing papers, smiling at customers, but my mind spun only around Daniel and Emily. I couldn't let them keep deceiving me and Michael. I needed more proof, to hear their words when they thought no one was listening. That night, I pretended to be tired. I went to bed early, telling Daniel, "I have to catch a bus early tomorrow. I'll sleep first." He nodded, patted my shoulder lightly. "Rest, Linda. Save your strength for the trip." I closed my eyes, but my ears strained to catch every sound. Near midnight, when his snoring stopped, I heard him slip quietly out of bed. The faint glow of his phone lit the dark. He left the room thinking I was asleep. I stayed silent, my heart racing. Then I crept up, tiptoeing after him. Hiding behind the heavy curtain in the living room, I saw him standing in the shadows by the window. He held his phone to his ear, speaking softly. "Yeah, come to the house tomorrow. No need for the hotel. Linda's going to sign that contract. She'll be late." I heard a faint laugh on the other end. Emily's sweet voice. "Perfect, Dad. Finally some peace." Daniel chuckled. "Yes, come early. I'll be waiting." I stood behind the curtain, my blood boiling. They weren't just betraying me, they planned to turn my house, my son's home, into their meeting place. Disgusting. I quietly slipped back to the bedroom. I opened the drawer and took out Michael's old recorder, the one I bought him in college to tape lectures. I checked the batteries, replaced them, and switched it to continuous recording. I hid it behind the nightstand shelf, carefully running the wire and covering it with a family photo frame. The photo of the four of us at Michael and Emily's wedding. Looking at it, a bitter taste filled my mouth. Emily's smile, Daniel's arm now nothing but lies. Before getting back into bed, I checked once more to make sure the recorder was running, then set the frame back. I lay down, pretending to sleep. Daniel returned, dropped onto the bed, and snored like nothing had happened. But I lay awake in the dark, sharper than ever. I set the alarm earlier than usual. I closed my eyes, not to rest, but to wait for the next step in my plan. I rose at 5 a.m., the sky still dark, streetlights casting, pale light through the window. The house was silent, except for Daniel's steady snores in the bedroom. I sat in the kitchen, a cold cup of coffee in hand, eyes fixed on the pan of oil already set on the gas stove. This was the final step of the plan, a simple smoke trap, but enough to expose the truth. I tied a thin string to the ignition switch. I pulled it toward the window and fastened it to an old heavy coffee can. With one pull, the flame would catch the oil, sending thick black smoke billowing out for the neighbors to see. I cracked the kitchen window open to vent the smoke. I tested it once. The smoke rose quickly, swirling like a warning. I snuffed it out immediately, checking carefully to erase all signs before Daniel could suspect. Then I put on a coat, grabbed a large bag, and pretended to head out. Before leaving, I shook Daniel gently. "I need to get to the bus station now," I said evenly. "I'm going to sign that contract. I'll definitely be late." He opened his eyes sleepily. "All right. Take care, Linda. Call if you need anything." Then he buried his face back into the pillow and drifted off again. I stared at him. The man I once loved and trusted lay there, clueless about the trap waiting for him. I turned away, my heart heavy but my steps firm as I walked out the door. Instead of heading to the bus station, I crossed the street to Clara's house, my kind neighbor. She opened the door, concerned at the sight of my bag. "Linda, why are you up so early? Is something wrong?" she asked gently. I forced a smile. "Clara, let me stay here for a few hours. I just need to watch my house." She frowned but asked no more. She brewed hot coffee and sat me by the window. From there, I had a clear view of my front door, where Daniel and Emily would walk in, where the truth would be laid bare. Near 10 a.m., a taxi pulled up outside. Emily stepped out in a light floral dress, oversized sunglasses shielding her face. Daniel opened the door, glanced around, then hurried her inside. My grip tightened around the coffee cup, my heart pounding. "It's time," I whispered, opening the app linked to the recorder hidden in the bedroom. The sound streamed through my earphones. Emily setting her bag down, glasses clinking, heavy footsteps. Then Daniel's hoarse voice. So peaceful. No more sneaking around at motels. Emily laughed. "You picked the right time. The old lady's gone, isn't she?" I bit my lip, swallowing rage at hearing her call me old lady with such contempt. Then the bed began to creak, followed by sounds I didn't want to hear. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and told myself, "Just a little longer, Linda. Just a little longer." Minutes later, suddenly Emily screamed, "What the hell is this? We're stuck together." Her voice was panicked, nearly in tears. Daniel snapped, "Shut up, hold on. Let me see." I smiled. With a tap on my phone, I triggered the smoke trap remotely. The string pulled tight, the gas stove ignited, and the pan of oil erupted in flames. Thick black smoke curled out of the kitchen window like a signal flare. Clara gasped, looking out her window. "Linda, your house is on fire!" I pretended to be shocked, though inside I felt strangely calm. Neighbors rushed into their yards, shouting, "Linda's house is burning! Call the fire department!" Mr. Brown grabbed his phone and quickly dialed. I stood there, clutching my coffee cup, eyes fixed on my house. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. In my earphones, Emily's voice grew more desperate. "Daniel, do something. I can't move." Daniel roared, "Shut up, I'm trying." But I knew they couldn't do anything. The industrial glue I had swapped into the tube was doing its work, trapping them in their most humiliating moment. I pictured them struggling, panicking, and part of me felt satisfied. Not because I was cruel, but because they had pushed me this far. I wanted to take my bakery, my family, my dignity. Now they had to pay. Smoke poured out. Neighbors gathered in panic. "What's happening? Where's Linda?" someone cried. Another answered, "I heard she's out of town on business." Clara looked at me with suspicion in her eyes, but only squeezed my hand gently. I knew she guessed, but I didn't need to explain. The truth was about to spill out. 10 minutes later, the wail of sirens rang down the street like a funeral bell. A red truck screeched to a stop in front of my house. I saw Michael jump down from the driver's seat in his fire chief's uniform, his face taut with focus. My son shouted, strong and commanding, "Gear up fast, there are people trapped inside." My heart clenched. My boy, who had always been proud of our family, was about to face its cruelest truth. I wanted to run to him, to whisper, "Forgive me, Michael, I had no other choice." But I stayed put, letting the plan unfold. Smoke still billowed from the kitchen, convincing Michael and his crew it was a serious blaze. Michael led the charge, smashing the door with an axe, wood splintering loud. His crew rushed in with hoses and extinguishers. From the bedroom came shouts, Emily's sobs mixed with Daniel's barks. "Do something, Daniel. I can't stand it," she wailed. "Shut up! Stop screaming!" he snapped. I bit my lip, gripping the phone still streaming sound from the hidden mic. They were bound, helpless, exactly as I had planned. Michael burst into the room, and I could imagine the sight before him. His own father and wife, naked, stuck to each other on the bed, faces pale with pain and panic. I wasn't there, but in my earphones I heard Michael's choked voice. What is this?" A firefighter behind him muttered, "Oh, Lord." Another couldn't help but let out a nervous laugh. Michael snapped, Silence! I knew it wasn't just about order. It was his last desperate cry to cover his breaking heart. The shame was out, not only for Michael but for his whole team and the entire neighborhood. A firefighter came out and reported, "Chief, the smoke's out. Just a small oil fire, nothing serious." But Michael didn't answer. I knew he still stood frozen, staring at the scene inside. Outside, neighbors crowded at the door, whispering, pointing. "What on earth? That's Daniel with his daughter-in-law!" A woman shrieked. "My God, how could this be?" Another exclaimed, "Beside me." Clara lifted her phone and quietly recorded Daniel and Emily writhing on the bed, faces twisted in pain. She turned to me, her eyes a mix of pity and anger. "Linda, you knew about this, didn't you?" I didn't answer, just gave a slight nod, eyes locked on the window. Michael stepped out, his boots heavy on the floor. Through my earphones, I heard Daniel's hoarse shout, "Get them out! Michael, close the door!" But it was far too late. The whole neighborhood was there, eyes filled with contempt, voices buzzing like a chorus of shame. "Father-in-law and daughter-in-law, caught red-handed," a man said in disbelief. "Poor Linda. How could she bear it?" Another sighed. After a pause, the firefighters did their duty. They wrapped Daniel and Emily in blankets, hauling them onto stretchers. Emily's sobs rang out, mixed with cries of pain. "Please help me, I can't take this anymore." Daniel moaned weakly, "Don't let anyone see us." But everyone already had. Disgusted stares, mocking laughter, disappointed shakes of the head surrounded them. They were carried out, shrouded in thin blankets, through the jeering crowd. So shameful. Father-in-law and daughter-in-law disgusting. Voices rang out. The ambulance wailed away as people shouted and laughed bitterly. "What a ridiculous circus, mister." Brown bellowed, "Unbelievable. How shameless can people be?" A woman shook her head, whispering to her neighbor, "Poor Linda." I stood in the crowd, feigning shock as if I had just run back from the bus station. Michael stood frozen in the yard, arms limp at his sides, his face ashen as death. His crew avoided his eyes, silently packing up equipment. I knew Michael wasn't only shattered by the sight of his father and wife glued to each other, but by the double betrayal from the two he loved most. I longed to hold him, to tell him how much it hurt me to let him witness it, but I restrained myself, walking with Clara quietly to the hospital. We sat in a third-floor hallway, waiting. I kept the look of a worried wife who'd just learned her house burned. Hours later, a doctor appeared, sweat on his brow. He looked at me and said softly, "Mrs. Linda, we managed to separate them. Luckily, no serious injuries, just ointment will do." I nodded, feigning relief, hand brushing the bag where 2 tubes of thick mustard waited. "Thank you, doctor," I whispered shakily, hiding my plan. "Can I see them now?" He nodded, handing me 2 ointment tubes from the nurse's desk. The young nurse looked at me with pity. "Ma'am, this must be so hard. I'm sorry." I smiled faintly, and when she turned away, I quickly swapped them for the mustard tubes in my bag. My hands moved fast and sure, as if rehearsed 100 times in my mind. I stepped into the hospital room, carrying the tubes, feigning concern. "Daniel, Emily, are you all right?" Emily lay on the bed, hair a mess, eyes red, unable to meet my gaze. Daniel, pale, stammered, "Linda, I can explain." I didn't let him finish. I set the tubes on the bedside table and turned to leave. Minutes later, agonized screams ripped down the hall. Emily clutched her face, sobbing, "It burns! My skin is on fire!" Daniel writhed, cursing, What the hell? Who did this? Chaos erupted. Patients and families crowded the hallway. A woman whispered to her son. That's them, the pair from the video this morning, father-in-law and daughter-in-law. Shameful. Another added. Serves them right. The doctor rushed in, telling nurses to wipe their skin and apply neutralizing cream, but the humiliation was already public. Clara's video of them being carried out on stretchers had spread through the neighborhood, even hitting social media. I stood in the hall, listening to the whispers, feeling as if the whole world was watching the downfall of two traitors. When the crowd thinned, Michael walked into the room holding a thick folder. I had called him as soon as the ambulance left, asking him to fetch the envelope of evidence I'd hidden in the drawer, along with the 2 divorce petitions I'd prepared. Michael handed it to me, his eyes hollow, silent. I opened it, laid the papers before Daniel and Emily, and stared straight into their eyes. My voice was cold, unwavering. 40 years of marriage ends here. Sign, and then do whatever you want as long as you disappear from my life and my son's. Emily broke down, sobbing to Michael. Honey, forgive me. I was wrong, I beg you. But Michael only looked at her with eyes hard as stone, then walked out. Daniel tried to grab my hand, voice trembling. Linda, please, listen. I didn't want this. I yanked my hand away and cut him off. Don't say another word, Daniel. This is the path you chose. He cried out desperately, Linda, please. But a nurse interrupted. Quiet, this is a hospital. I turned away, never looking back. In the hall, Michael leaned against the wall, head in his hands. I came close, placed my hand on his shoulder. He whispered, voice raw, Mom. How could it be Dad? How could it be her? I didn't answer, just held him tight, sharing our grief. In that moment, I knew Daniel and Emily had lost everything, their dignity, their marriage, their schemes. But Michael and I had lost a family too. I could only hope time would bring peace. Weeks after the scandal, my bakery was busier than ever. The Resixit at my bakery. Bell above the door rang constantly, customers smiling, praising. Linda, you're so strong, Clara said, holding a bag of freshly baked flan. The whole neighborhood is proud of you for protecting your family bakery through all this filth. I smiled, thanking her. They all called me strong, but only I knew that strength was pieced together from shards of a broken heart. Every time I looked at the oven where I had poured 40 years of sweat and tears, I remembered Daniel and Emily, who had once tried to take everything, but failed. I was still here with the bakery, with Michael, and with a new life. Michael moved back in with me the very next day. He spoke little about what had happened, but I saw the change. He no longer laughed easily. His eyes were deep, carrying a wound that would not heal. Mom, I want to stay here for a while, he said the first night, carrying his bags inside. I'll help manage the bakery, handle customers, whatever you need. I held him close, feeling his warmth, asking no questions. I knew Michael needed time, and so did I. Every morning, we opened the bakery together. I lit the oven, set up the trays, while Michael checked invoices and called hotels and restaurants. Mom, Hilton wants to increase their pastry order for next week, he said from the counter, his voice steady but missing the spark it once had. I answered, All right, confirm it. I'll prepare more flour. Those simple moments gave me a peace I hadn't felt in years. No more Daniel's deceitful eyes, no more Emily's sweet but manipulative voice. Just Michael and me, tending to what remained. Dinners now were only the two of us, sitting across from each other in the small kitchen, eating plain meals. Sometimes it was rice with beans and chicken, other times just bread with coffee. "Mom, can we make flan this weekend?" Michael asked one evening, a faint smile breaking through the first one I had seen since it all happened. Of course," I said, relief washing over me. "But you have to help me stir the caramel." He nodded, and in that moment I felt the two of us slowly healing. I also began giving time to myself, something I had rarely done in 40 years. I joined a cooking club at the community center where women my age shared recipes and life stories. "Linda, you make the best flan in the neighborhood," one woman laughed as I brought in a tray. I smiled and replied, "It's a recipe I learned back in Texas." I also started attending Sunday service again. I sat quietly, the light from the stained glass falling across my face, praying not for Daniel or Emily, but for Michael and for myself, that we might find the strength to keep moving forward. Sometimes I walked with Clara through the park, listening to her talk about the neighbors. "Linda," she said, her eyes bright, "people still talk about Daniel and Emily, but everyone says you're the real winner." I just smiled without replying. Winner? Maybe, but the price was a broken family. Michael slowly changed too. He became less withdrawn, started telling me about his work as a firefighter. "Yesterday we put out a fire at the market. It was dangerous, but luckily no one got hurt," he said one evening over dinner. I listened, pride swelling inside me. "Be careful," I told him, my voice trembling. "You're all I have left." Michael looked at me gently. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll never leave you alone." Those words were like medicine, helping me believe that even though I had lost so much, I still had my son, someone who would always be there. One afternoon, with the bakery crowded, I sat at the counter looking out at the street. The bell over the door rang constantly, the smell of sweets filling the air. I gazed at the trays of flan and pastries, remembering the road I had traveled. I built this bakery with my own 2 hands, from a small-town girl in the South to a woman who learned how to stand tall. Perhaps the most painful part of my life wasn't Daniel and Emily's betrayal, but realizing that family, the fortress I thought would always hold, can crumble because of greed and selfishness. Yet in that loss, I learned something. True love and connection don't live in promises, but in those who stay when everything else falls apart. I still had Michael, I still had the bakery, and most importantly, I still had myself. I don't see this story as an ending, but as a new beginning, a place where I've learned to treasure simple peace, to love myself, and never let anyone steal my voice again. And what about you? If you were in my place, would you choose silence to keep the peace, or would you face it to protect yourself and those you love? Share your thoughts, because every story, every word, can be a light for someone lost in the dark. And if you'd like to keep listening with me, reflecting and finding strength in these life stories, stay with this channel. Because who knows, maybe the next story is the one you need to take your next step.